Sorry for the late start, but we've had a little change in agenda here just because Robin Saunders, Ambassador Saunders, who was to be our moderator, has not been able to show up yet. She may get here in the course of the afternoon. So my apologies for her. Her place has been taken by Roger Mark de Sousa, who is the director of our environmental climate security program, climate change and security program here at the Woodrow Wilson Center. He's new to us. He comes from Population Action International, where he was vice president for research and director of the climate program there. We're delighted to have him, and I know he was here for at least part, if not all, of the morning session, so you saw the flavor of what we're trying to do. And I know he's worked with youth and women around the world as well, so he's going to be a perfect moderator for us. This afternoon's session, as you see, is Paying It Forward, How to Sustain New Generations of Female and Youth Leaders in STI. I think is a perfect takeoff for where we were this morning, what we talked about, the kind of dynamism and youthful vigor and enthusiasm that we saw was really refreshing and inspiring, as many of you said. But how do we maintain that? How do we expand that? How do we support it? How do we give it reinforcement? And I think that's kind of what we're trying to get at here today. I do want to say at this point in time, I wouldn't normally do it right now, but I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole afternoon because I have to leave, of all places, I have to leave for Kenya later this afternoon. And so I'm going to have to rush, get my bag and get out to the airport. So I'm not going to be able to close the session. So I do want to say a special word of thanks to my staff. Ali Lyons, who is the program associate for the program for project on leadership and building state capacity, who's been the primary organizer of this event. We're co-partnering this event with our environmental change and security program that Roger Mark heads, and we thank them for their partnership in this program. But Ali has done the bulk of the work with my staff, Mamhadi Diouf and Derek Langford and Elise Berry. All have worked hard on it. I don't see most of them. No, there they are, back in the back of the room. So I'm thanking you now because I'll be leaving soon. Okay. So I wish you good deliberations this afternoon. I think we got off to a wonderful, wonderful start. I'm going to leave it to Roger Mark to introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. And it's always fun to step in and help out. You know, I did ask a question in this morning's session, and they told me that was going to be covered this afternoon. So, you know, that always happens when you ask a question. You get to have to deal with that session. It's wonderful to be here. It's just my second week at the center, but I was very encouraged by the discussion that we had this morning, a lot of innovation and invigoration coming out of the region, and I hope that you had a good lunch. I had a discussion with three recent graduate students who are now in Washington, D.C. looking for work, and they were very encouraged by what they had heard this morning. So let's continue in that spirit. I think we're going to follow the same order that we have in the program. So we'll start with Edith, and I'll ask you just to say a couple of words to introduce yourself, and I think you have about 10 minutes, and then we'll take it from there. So let's welcome Edith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edith. I'm a postdoc research officer with the African Technology and Policy Studies Network, and I'm also the coordinator of the African Women Forum for Science and Technology. So today I would like to make a presentation on the paying forward concept. We have seen from the presentations that have been made here that great ideas are there in Africa and great minds are also there, but what is lacking is the sustainability of the innovations that are coming up. How can we upscale these innovations so that they have got either African-wide impact or even global impact? And that is what the African Technology and Policy Studies Center is doing at the moment. And I would like to begin my presentation. So we know that Africa is a very youthful population, and there is a great need for science and technology to enable Africa to leapfrog in its development agenda. And the African Technology and Policy Studies Center is a multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary network of researchers, policy analysts, policymakers also, and other development actors, and again, even government and academia, who have come together to form a network that enables them to conduct policy research, to broker knowledge, to disseminate information, to build the capacities of Africans, and even for for Africa, for policymakers around Africa, so as to realize development and again sustainable development in Africa. Some of the some of the strategic priorities. Sorry. Some of the strategic priorities of the African, I will call it the ATPS from now, because it's quite a bit of a mouthful. So, so some of the strategic priorities of the ATPS are as outlined there, but I will mainly focus on the youth and women one, which is why we are here in the first place. And so the youth and women forum for the youth and women forum for the ATPS works under the quadruple helix kind of networking system, where we engage policymakers, we engage the academia, we engage research, and we engage government in trying to develop collaborations and trying to develop solutions for Africa's problems. And that's the quadruple helix that I'm talking about. And we also engage the civil society. We've got branches all over Africa. We've got chapters, we call them national chapters all over Africa, where we engage the youth and the women in all these activities that we are doing. And in these national chapters, those are the national chapters that we are working with. And we also have got branches in the US, in Australia, and in the UK, and we plan to even establish others in New Zealand, in South America, the Caribbean, and also in China. So what do we want to achieve with all this? We are trying to develop and to sustain a generation of young women and men who can take the development agenda of Africa forward through innovation. And through doing this, we have the I'm sorry, I don't know, my PowerPoint is We have the paying forward concept, where the African Technology and Policy Studies Center tries to engage the youth and the women by training them and by building their capacities, where the women and the youth who are trained are supposed to act as the champions. We call them champions to lead the innovation agenda, not just in Africa, but even globally. And we engage them through breakthrough innovations. We have got incubation hubs where they are able to be trained in many areas that they will require to become influential innovators. And then these people who are trained are supposed to pay it forward by again training other people and ensuring that whatever it is they learn, they enter into some kind of commitment with us, so that whatever it is that they learn and the empowerment they get, they're supposed to pass it forward to other people in their communities and in their countries also. So I will speak about the two experiences of the two forums that we have, the African Women Forum for Science and Technology and the and the Youth Forum for Science and Technology. So the African Women Forum for Science and Technology is actually having memberships in the thousands in the African continent and also in the diaspora. And this forum is led by women, exclusively by women. And so what do we do within this forum? There is a lot of innovation incubation that is happening, where women are actually paired up with strategic women in science and technology who are identified based on their accomplishments and based on the activities that they are doing on the ground. And these strategic women are paired up with about 5 young women. And these 5 young women learn from them, are mentored from them, are mentored by them, and they are expected to also, when they come of age and whatever it is that they learn, to mentor other people. And the program goes on, and it becomes self-sustaining. There's also a lot of peer-to-peer collaboration, because as we have seen here, sometimes there is an element of duplication of efforts and duplication of resources. So how can we have a forum or a network where Africans who are working on particular issues can come together to network and even to learn from each other, so that they can identify what's the next big thing that Africa needs? You know, if all of us are doing all this, so then what's the next big thing? So this organization presents a platform for these kinds of activities. We hold very many activities. We hold workshops where all these young people and women come together to talk about their activities. We also have incubation hubs, and we also have Innovation Challenge Awards, where these young people and these women are engaged in some kind of competitive process where whoever is selected gets to get small grants and support so that they can be able to take their innovations forward. We also have postdoctoral fellowships and internships that also enable them to learn more skills and to engage with the greater audience, and also to access resources and also to access mentorship and funding for their projects. The African Youth Forum for Science and Technology is a mirror initiative of the African Women Forum for Science and Technology. And what the Youth Forum does is it helps the young men and women who've got good ideas about innovation to get a platform through which they can talk about their ideas, and to get somebody to mentor them through the process of whatever it is they want to develop. And based on that, they also get startup funds. We've got small grants that we give them to enable them to start up their projects. And we also enable them to participate in the global agenda, through north-to-north partnerships, through north-south partnerships, and also south-south partnerships. We also provide internship and fellowship programs for them. And a lot of things are happening in Africa, and the youth and the women have a very great role to play. The ATPS is partnering with very many organizations across the African continent, but most importantly, it is partnering with the African Union, which is a very strong body of all African states. And at some point, the African heads of government have actually put the youth agenda as a top priority for them. And there's a lot of money that is being committed to help the youth and the women in these kinds of innovation, and also in building science and technology. And this is where we come in, because we are actually a think tank that the African Union recognizes and works with. We have a memorandum of understanding to ensure that we are able to build capacity, and to ensure that we are sustaining a greater the next generation of women and young leaders. And based on that, we also work with the NEPAD, which is also a regional body. We also work with other regional bodies like the East African Community, COMESA, SADC, and ECOWAS. And we are also branching out we also receive a lot of assistance from our development partners to take this forward. And we want to make it bigger, we want to make it greater, but we definitely need much more support. And this is something that Africa really has to look into. How can we move from innovations that are local based to make them global, so that they can be used by everybody and all over the world. So these are challenges that Africa will have to think about. But again, a lot of good things are happening, and we are looking forward to a more fruitful engagement with all of you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edith. Some interesting information about the model of paying it forward, and what it means in terms of these early adopters and the incubation hubs, and thinking about sort of this mentoring and strategic pairing of women, and sort of creating opportunities around fellowships and awards. Being from the Caribbean myself, every time I go back to Africa, they say, "Welcome home." So I'm glad to hear that you're expanding to the Caribbean, because I know there will be a lot of receptivity and opportunities for collaboration there. So let's move on to our second speaker, who is Liz. And I know that Liz, she'll tell us a little bit more about herself, but she's born in Uganda and she's raised in the United Nations. So I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that. So Liz, we give the floor to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And I wanted to tell you something. When I received the call from Ali about coming to join this conference, I was really, really quite honored. But I want us to all congratulate her because she just got engaged.
Ah!
Thank you. Okay. If you'd like to access my presentation, I just tweeted it out. And in fact, if you see there at Liz Nganzi, that's my Twitter handle. And I have the presentation hosted on my SlideShare page for you to be able to access. I'm very much a big believer in sharing content, and I have links and stuff for you to be able to access. So I was born in Uganda, and about, I won't tell you which year, but when I was 4 years old, I was fortunate to be transported here by my mom, who was she was a diplomat, and we came to live to New York, and following the war in Uganda, we ended up staying, and my mother worked at UNDP. So I used to do my homework at the UN. But here's the thing, I also went to the United Nations International School when I was 5 to 17. So that's what I mean by literally being raised at the United Nations. But before I start, I want everybody to stand up, because I can see your eyes kind of like glazing over. You know, their food. Post lunch. Love for you to stretch a little bit. This is also for me. I need to stretch too. I was on a flight very early this morning. And then what I'd like to do, if we can kind of figure out how to stay standing, what I'd like you to do is every other row. So starting with your row, Rahel, put your hand up, and then the woman in the red. Every other row, turn back behind you and introduce yourself to the person behind you. Or if you don't have anyone behind you, then next to you.
I really got people talking.
Yeah. Mix you up.
I'm just Trini. When I was growing up, my mother's best friend was from Trini. I've been to Ross Beach, the whole thing. Yeah, no, Ross. So I'm your sister, like Okay. All right.
And they have the time during lunch. It's nothing formal.
Right. Okay. I didn't realize you all would be this chatty, but it's great. Keep going. And if someone doesn't mind taking a photo of me, I'd like to be able to share it with my mom. We'd be standing. Make her proud, right? So, anyway, this presentation is really not so much focused on the work that I do. You can read about it. I'm pretty much someone who's pretty out there on via social media, but I've been in the business for about 20 years. I started off in technology a long time ago when you didn't even really have an internet, right? I remember doing research, trying to look for information for a paper, and literally I was staring at a black screen, typing in characters and trying to figure out what I was going to find, and it was very challenging. And so when you fast forward to today and you see what's going on, it's quite amazing. And in fact, my senior paper at Syracuse University in 1992, I wrote about, I was a telecommunications systems concentration major, and I talked about the challenges in Africa in terms of our ability to really facilitate communication on the continent, because at the time, if you think about it, we really didn't have a lot of terrestrial lines, or we didn't have a lot of landlines. And so my thinking was, instead of us trying to figure out how to bring more landlines to the continent, let's figure out how we can leverage mobile. Now, it wasn't mobile at the time, it was satellite. How we can leapfrog the technology of the time so that we'd be able to go. So when I see all that we're doing with mobile and how much it's really changed the way we communicate, the way we solve problems, I was so inspired when I watched the presentations this morning, and saw what young people are doing with mobile and literally transforming other people's lives. Now we just have to scale everything. But my presentation is going to talk about how I'm paying it forward, working with organizations that they themselves are paying it forward, because I have been a recipient of a great amount of coaching and mentoring and support and so on and so forth. And so I'm sort of an embodiment of that. And I like to, kind of if you look at the word Ubuntu, who's familiar with that word? Ubuntu? And what does it mean to you, Rahel? Community? Okay, who else? I saw you put your hand up. I can see. I have peripheral vision. Right. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it means that. Well, to me, I mean, this if you go on Wikipedia, you can find more literal translations. But the way I see it is, it's really it is about I am because we all are, but it's really about how interconnected we are. And so it means that in order for me to be successful, I'm reaching out to you to help me. I have to be willing to not only help you, but help the next person. And so I believe that it's really firmly within our culture, within Africa, to do so. So this isn't paying it forward. Isn't a concept that's just now being introduced to the continent. So I'm going to introduce you to about 4 different organizations, one of which is Africa. Is there anybody familiar with Africa? I know that Isaac would be familiar with them because they originally, the person who founded it, his name is John Gossier. You may have heard of him. He was one of the folks who really spent a lot of time trying to build up the technology space in Kenya in terms of iHub, in terms of Ushahidi, and a number of different innovations. Anyway, he founded this organization. He's from Philly. He founded an organization that looks to really support various entrepreneurs, innovators on the continent through various initiatives. I'm going to only focus on 2 of them. The first one of which is Apps for Africa, and that's a contest. I think you mentioned, Edith mentioned that they have sort of a business competition, but Apps for Africa is a continent-wide competition. In fact, I was a judge this past year. We selected, out of 300 submissions continent-wide, we selected 3 winners, one of which was from Uganda. And I'm going to be mentoring them, and I'll explain what they're doing. But so that's one of the things they do. The other initiative that they're involved with is Women in Technology Uganda. Was started by a young woman named Barbara Birungi. And Barbara is really quite amazing. First of all, I want to let you know that everybody I'm introducing you to, I've either never met in person or I met initially online. And so that's also something for us to consider is if we're looking to support organizations, we're trying to learn about, find new partnerships, we should be willing to go online to create them. But anyway, so Women in Technology Uganda was started by a woman named Barbara Birungi, who's very young, and she realized that the reason why she was able to learn coding, so she's like a big coder. She learned coding. She was in her high school. They had like maybe 10 computers available for the students to use. And because she was aggressive enough to stand in front of the line, she got one of the computers. But the other girls weren't aggressive, and they didn't want to seem like they were pushy. So only the rest of the people who had access to computers were boys. And then the teacher, seeing how kind of, I guess, the kind of go-getter she is, he took special interest in her and really kind of cultivated her talents and so on and so forth. And so she's taken this initiative to teach younger girls in Uganda and inspire them to become coders on their own. And they've hosted hackathons. And I'm going to show you an event that they hosted this past weekend. So the photos are hot off the presses at a girls' high school in Uganda. Sounds good? So this is Hive Collab, which is actually where a lot of what Africa does is hosted. And it's basically a co-working space that's in a very nice part of Kampala. I wish I could show you the building. In fact, if I were working in Uganda, that's where I'd want to work. And basically, it's a space where if you're an entrepreneur, and people always say, like, you have these entrepreneurs in Africa, right? And you say, I'm an entrepreneur, and then say, like, where's your office? If you don't have an office, right? It's not like here where it's cool to have started your company in a garage, or a lot of people have home offices. There, you don't seem legitimate. And so by providing this co-working space and an address that you can give to people, and office and conference space, and so on and so forth, the Hive Collab is facilitating the entrepreneurs' ability to be taken seriously and to be able to grow their businesses. And they provide Wi-Fi access. In fact, I go there to get Wi-Fi when I'm in Uganda. But so that is part of the Africa team, and that was when I went to go visit them in October. Apps for Africa is the business challenge that I mentioned. This is the 3rd year that they've held it, and basically it's a continent-wide challenge. They look for young people who are doing amazing things all over the continent. Who's heard of iCow? iCow. Okay, iCow was one of the winners of the competition last year. Can anyone tell us what iCow does? As you can see, I teach. Go ahead. She's going to get it for you so that the people online can.
It lets farmers know the gestation of cows for dairy use, and so it's a wonderful program. I've been looking at it. Thank you.
Sure. And so that was one of the programs that, received funding that was submitted into the Apps for Africa Challenge and then subsequently received funding. And I actually read about it online. And so they've received a lot of publicity, but the fact of the matter is they're using technology. They've received some funding so they can begin to scale up, and that's really important. It's great that we have people who are energized and want to code and create technology, but if we're not actually creating jobs, if we're not facilitating economic activity, we're really not solving the problems and challenges that we have, namely the youth unemployment. Does anyone know what the youth unemployment rate is in Africa? 60, 70, right? Yeah, so that's a serious problem that we need to address. So this is Feni, and it's basically a software program. It's a software solution for small businesses in Uganda, and that was one of the winners from Uganda of this year's competition, and they received $10,000. And the young man who founded this company, he's 22 years old. And he received $10,000 funding. Now, $10,000 here may not seem like a lot of money, but if you're in Uganda, it's a phenomenal amount of money to be able for him to be able to scale up. And just to give you a little sense of how the competition impacted him, about a day after he won and they announced it, he received 300 new requests for users. And so at his point, his challenge is figuring out how to grow without, how to take on all these new users without overtaxing his system. And so that's part of what he's received as a result of going through this business challenge. Women in Technology Uganda. So this is their website. At the end of my presentation, I've given you links to all of the websites. So if you want to research on your own, you'd be able to. So Women in Technology Uganda, I told you a little bit about Barbara. This is Barbara. If you can see, I know it's a little bit dark, but Barbara is there in the black and white dress. And so she started this organization trying to really inspire other women to become involved in coding. And they're looking to formalize their program even more so. But I just love the fact that this is really the first one that you have there. And that she's affiliated with Apps for Africa and the Africa people, so that gives her an ability to be able to leverage from their funding networks to be able to learn how they're doing what they're doing and to be able to kind of implement the best practices that they have in place for their own programs. This is, did you know that this past Sunday was International ICT Day? ICT, Girls in ICT Day? Well, okay, Women in Technology Uganda did. And so as part of that celebration, they hosted a kind of a girl coding day at a local high school in Uganda. And so this is the flyer. This is the school, Chambago College School. And this gives you, some of you into how they were, sort of training them. And basically, not only did they teach them about sort of the opportunities available to them in tech, kind of encouraging them to think about when they go to college, the sort of majors they could pursue. And then more importantly, they taught them how to develop websites. And so I thought that was kind of fun. But what's even better is they really kind of made it cool to be a code girl, right? Because it's one thing, like, you don't want to, I remember because I was like the computer geek, right? So I know it wasn't the thing that you wanted to be. But now what they're trying to do is turn it into something cool so that young girls will be willing and want to go in that direction. So I thought this was cute. These are the cool code girls from the program. And then I hope you can see that. Can anyone read what this says? It's a screenshot that one of the girls typed in at the end, and I thought it was really Edith, can you read it for us? Because you're close enough.
It says, "I'm proud to be a Ugandan woman under ICT."
Yeah, and I thought that was really significant. So, I'm a very visual storyteller, but I think that I can tell you more by showing those photos than I can by going through a lot of content. And I just really love this because it tells you the sort of at least short-term impact they're making on these girls. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where they are in 4 years and what they're, what kind of accomplishments they're making. The last person or the organization I'd like to introduce you to is the Anakazi Center, and it's founded by a woman named, actually phenomenal woman, originally from Zambia. She is located in Los Angeles. Her name is Yareka Mbago, and she herself has a pretty amazing personal journey she's gone through, and at some point decided that she wanted to support women within Zambia and then beyond as they pursue their entrepreneurial journey. And so she's provided a multiple of ways for these women to kind of pursue their entrepreneurial pursuits. And one of them is she has a website that provides you with a lot of information. It's eventually going to be a portal with a lot of very useful information to all these entrepreneurs who are on the continent. But the one thing I really want to focus on is, and that's her. The one thing I want to focus on is she has a radio podcast, and that's how I initially met her. Is she emailed me and asked me if she could interview me for the radio podcast, and it's on every Saturday afternoon. And she interviews women from all over who you otherwise would never hear about, but are really doing some pretty amazing things. And I think that's important. Rahel talked about the fact that we need to change the conversation. We need to put the positive stories out there, and this woman is using the power of Blog Talk Radio to be able to do so. And so I think that this is actually the most important thing that she is doing. They're currently expanding into 5 chapters worldwide. And they recently opened a chapter in Zambia where they're going to have sort of like a small business development center type of operation available to women, and they'll replicate that model in other countries. But again, I think that the radio program is really quite unique, and I encourage you to go on her website and learn more. Do I have time? So one other thing that Allie did, because now she's charmed me so much, right? So she emailed me and asked me if I could write a blog post for Africa Up Close, which I did, and you can, I think, access it on their website. And it was really about how people can pay it forward, right? So you're here, you're energized, you're learning about all these different organizations, and then, how can you get involved, right? I'm assuming you're here because you want to figure out how to get involved with these or other organizations. And so as someone who lives in this space, I do a lot of coaching. I mentor many people. I'm involved in a lot of boards. I figured I could really speak about it from that perspective. And so mentoring, which is what we hear a lot about and we're kind of most familiar with, is really kind of, it can vary, right? It can go anywhere from I mentor people for one session. I do Skype sessions, one session, to I can mentor you over a period of time. I have a mentor who I've had for 17 years. I speak to him once a year. He'll for like 2 hours, and he'll give me a whole bunch of lists of stuff I need to think about in my business and what I'm doing. And then, I check in with him and I keep moving. That's our interaction. And it just really kind of depends. But it's the least formal type of relationship someone who's trying to support you can have with you. The next one is a coach. A coach can either be paid or can be free, can be free. And that relationship has a very specific set of goals. So I had a business coach back in 2004. I was trying to kind of address certain issues within my business. And so we had specific goals we're trying to accomplish. I had to check in with her every month, every week, to show her where I was going with those goals. And at the end, we were able to specifically identify a specific change within the business. And so that's what a coach can do for you. How many of you, the entrepreneurs who are in this room, how many of you have a coach? Okay, 2. Okay, so you know why I asked that question, right? Because you need a coach, probably, or at least a mentor. Then board member is another way to get involved, or people can support the efforts of organizations. Do you have a board member? Do you have board, Isaac? Okay, and what does your board do for you?
Use the microphone.
For the people on the internet, they need to hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they are our channel, sort of our spider web, because they have to bring something into the company,
Right.
Be it experience or their network based on the domain we're in. So that's a bit key on when we're selecting board members.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's something that you just said that's really important, selecting and providing them with the criteria, because I can tell you one of the biggest challenges with organizations bringing in board members is they don't really define the expectations up front. And so what happens is you have this relationship that really doesn't meet any party's expectations. And what happens is, because the entrepreneur is so desperate, the entrepreneur or nonprofit is desperate to bring these people on and to affiliate their name with their brand, that they're willing to just bring them on without saying to them, look, I need you to come and raise money for me, or I need you to help us with our legal, whatever. And so you entrepreneurs, those of you who are running organizations, need to be willing to really clarify what you need. And if those of you who are looking to become or been asked to be board members, if the organization or the entrepreneur does not provide you with a specific set of criteria for how you should be engaged, you should be very wary, because that relationship is not going to go very well. The last type of relationship you can have is a sponsor. Do you have a sponsor, Laura? Right? Laura, that's her name. Diana, sorry, Diana. Diana, do you have a sponsor? Do you have
When I started the project, I basically sponsored it myself.
Okay.
Then later on, I got into a competition and I got sponsored by MasterCard Foundation.
Okay.
And so there's a prize money of $15,000. So basically, that's what has been helping me to run the project
Okay.
for the last 1 year. Yes.
Okay, so that's one type. So that's a corporate sponsor. The type of sponsor that I'm referring to here is an individual who maybe is within MasterCard or a corporation, someone who's influential and really believes enough in your organization, probably has been engaged with you in one of the other ways and says, you know what, now I'm really going to stake my reputation to help you move your agenda forward. That's very different from a mentor who gives you advice. This is someone who's going to bring money into your organization. They're going to open up their network to you, and they're literally going to endorse you so that whatever it is you're trying to accomplish will be accomplished. And it takes time to cultivate that relationship, but if once you have a really good sponsor, things can go really amazingly. And so those are the various forms. And I have more detail. If you click on the link here on this presentation, you'll be able to read the whole piece that I wrote. But I want you to think about the various ways that you can support. Those of you who are in the audience looking to support any of the organizations you've heard about today, which ones of these make sense for you? And it's really about alignment. Like, I get approached all the time to support organizations, but if what they're doing is not aligned with my values and not aligned with kind of what I want to support, I'm very much interested in youth and women, entrepreneurship, and technology. If it's not aligned with that, I'm not going to get involved, and no matter how many times you try to solicit me. And so it's really important that the organizations understand what the people who they're trying to approach are looking to do. And you also need to understand we're all busy. I'm really busy, and I'm sure all of you are really busy. And so it's also understanding that maybe someone may not be available to engage with your organization every day or every week, but maybe once in a while. Maybe I can do a Skype call once a month with you. I can commit to that. And so being creative about how you ask people to support you. And so that's my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Liz, and thank you for really embodying the spirit of Ubuntu, just in terms of how you got us up and moving and interacting and sort of making your points about leveraging and having a space for shared work and funding for scale up, creating jobs, what it means to be cool, these cool young girls, mentoring, coaching, sponsoring, being a board member. So some really good practical suggestions for us. And just a reminder for those of us who are following us online, we're at Twitter at Africa Close, at Africa Up Close, and hashtag is #AT4C. So as we go to our last speaker, Oriolua, she is in Nigeria, and her organization really focuses on helping Nigerian women to use technology to empower themselves socially and economically. So I'll ask you to say just a few words to introduce yourself, and it's all yours.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. My name is Ore Shomolu, and I'm the founder. Thank you. Okay, so I'm the founder and executive director of the Women's Technology Empowerment Center, WTech for short, because I know that's a long name. Okay, how do I move this forward? Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we do, and then I welcome any questions later on. So WTech, we're a non-profit, non-governmental organization based in Lagos, Nigeria, set up in 2008. And what we do is we build the capacities of Nigerian women and girls to help them increase their economic power using information and communication technologies specifically. That's what we do. And to be able to use those tools to also speak out about issues that they're passionate about. So we do that primarily through technology education and training. We organize mentoring. We also seek to build an active group of women who are very comfortable using technology, or even if they're not, they're interested and they want to learn from other women. And we also do some research. Now, so why do we do this? I'm sure a lot of us know about some of the research, or even just from our own casual observations. In Nigeria, women are very underrepresented in information technology, in general science and technology fields. And there's not a lot of research that is available, actually, especially for Nigeria, and especially gender disaggregated information. But the information that is available shows that women take up 20% of ICT jobs. And that is really a big loss to the country as a whole, and especially to the women. Technology has changed a lot of how we live, how we get information, how we learn, entrepreneurial activities, even how we relate to the government and interact with each other. So when women are not able to work and move and communicate and use these tools, then essentially they're left out of it. So we approach our work from that point of view and try to help women build skills that they can use, either to qualify for jobs, because there are a lot of jobs that people are applying for now and require certain basic literacy skills. But more importantly, we try to encourage women to become shapers, developers of technology. We really try to encourage entrepreneurship. So we look for women who are either business women already, or they're aspiring to be business women. And so we try to see how they can integrate technology in what they're doing. And with the women who we train, especially technology training, we also try to see what they can do in a technology-focused business. So we work with women across different age groups. I'll continue with why there's so few women in ICT. I'm sure there's a lot that has been said about that. I'll just pick out a few. The infrastructure is a big challenge for a lot of women. Prices for devices and also in the internet costs have come down, quite dramatically in the last few years, but it's still out of reach for a lot of women, so that's a big problem. I know that when we have our training programs, a lot of the women and the girls get very excited, but then once, they leave our space and they move back, into their homes and, school, if they don't have access to these tools, then it's very difficult for them to build up on what they've learned. Another big problem is social stereotypes. Research shows that up to a certain age, boys and girls are equally as interested in science and tech, but then once they start to imbibe stereotypes, then their interest and their participation in science and tech drastically declines. So a big part of our work is working with young women and girls when they're at the stage when they haven't taken on a lot of the stereotypes, and try to encourage like a lifelong interest in technology. Women in, especially Nigeria, Africa, they're very busy. It's a very traditional society. So while you may be a career woman, you may be running a business, or whether it's informal or formal, you're still expected to be the primary care of your family, of your children, look after your house. So basically, a lot of women don't really have a lot of time. I know that's an issue that we deal with in the work that we do. I'll speak a little bit about that later. So it's very important, like I said, from the economic point of view, that women who make up half of Nigeria's population are engaged, are working in these fields, are contributing to science and technology, and are innovators in this field, and their innovations are recognized. And also, research also shows that when you have teams and developers that are diverse, then they build and they create better tools. So that's very important. So we run a number of skill building programs. We have a camp, which is what I'll spend most of my time talking about. We have a program for young women between the ages of 18 to 30. Typically, these are women who are in institutes of higher education, and they're planning for their career, their future. There are lots of them who are not students because they can't afford to attend an institute, a university or polytechnic. And then you have a high unemployment rate. So there are lots of women who may have gone on to a higher education and they can't get a job. So they're just kind of trying to figure out what they want to do. So we try to help them develop skills that they can use to start businesses. So it's necessarily not something complex, but like we focus on web design, for instance, graphic design, so things that they can do on their own with relatively little capital. We have our Networking for Success program, which we have run in one form or the other all through since we started. And basically what we do there is we work with women who are very interested in social justice issues and affecting some kind of change in their community. And we demonstrate to them how they can use technology, and social media is a big part of it, to institute, to get conversations going, to build movements, to educate people about the issues that they're working with, to connect with other people. So that's been very interesting. And then we have our 16 days program, which takes place every year during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this takes place from November 25th to December 10th every year. But the angle we approach it from is that we work with young people, young women, trying to help them think about strategies of staying safe online. So online security, digital security, protecting their information so that they can surf, they can navigate the World Wide Web in a safe manner. There have been a few incidences of very horrific violence in the last few years. For instance, a lady who, she was a university student and met some people on Facebook, and she met up with them, and she was basically sexually assaulted and murdered. So, I mean, there are incidences like that that happen, and the first reaction tends to be, drawing back and parents, slamming down restrictions on their children and saying, oh yes, I knew it's not good for you to access these tools. Look at what happened to that young lady. But I mean, dangers abound all around, and technology has a lot of potential for good. So we try to help young girls and young women, and also their teachers, within the context of that program, think about how they can use these tools, but in a safe manner. We also have mentoring, and I'll also speak about in terms of our camp. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We do some research. That's one of a small portion of what we do, because like I mentioned, it's very difficult to find data on women's participation in science and technology in Nigeria. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, especially through documenting what we're doing and the results that we're getting. We do some work placement as well and internships. So after the young women have participated in our programs, they have opportunities to practice and build upon the skills and the knowledge they've gotten in a work environment. So I'll talk about the camp, because that's a really big part of what we do. We found through our work that it's really important to address the issue of a lack of women in science and technology from an early age. It's possible to do it at any stage, but it's much easier when you get girls and young women when they're at the stage when they haven't imbibed a lot of stereotypes and ideas about science and technology being, a male area and not for girls. And so that's what we do. The camp started off as a 1-week residential program. It's been expanded now to 2 weeks, and also we've expanded the number of girls that we have in it. And we've had a number of supporters over the years. We have technology classes, so a big part of the camp actually is the girls working in the labs and learning how to use different tools. When we started, because a lot of the girls who come to us really are from backgrounds where they haven't interacted much with science and tech, especially computers, internet. So we found that we really had to start from the basics. We have to start from the basics. We work with a lot of girls from public schools, very socioeconomically underprivileged backgrounds, and so we need to meet them where they are. So we have classes, starting with basic foundation classes, and then learning how to use different tools that they would probably require in school and maybe, you know, in work in the future, email, internet, things which are really today need our basic skills. We try to focus on tools which are fun, because that's a way to really get the girls hooked and get the girls wanting to do more. So social media, blogging is always a big part because the girls like to express themselves, and also it teaches a number of skills. Apart from developing a facility with using different tools, they learn to write as well, so we find that their writing skills improve, and then it gets them, you know, interested in other things. We try to focus, even when the girls are learning to use tools, they like to make something, you know, create something and make it their own. So for instance, we were teaching them how to document, how to do figures, how to create spreadsheets. So this is an example of one of the girls' work, and she was adding up her pocket money and how she spent it. And you can see that she's colored it and everything. So even with something that, you know, could be serious, you know, they take it and they make it fun and turn it into their own thing. Websites, so we teach the girls how to create websites, and we started first from blogging, and then from blogging they wanted to change their templates and modify their templates. So with that, we were now looking at the HTML, and then we thought, oh yeah, okay, so let's build websites. So for the websites, there are tools that we can use to create a very sophisticated website in minutes, but it's fun for the girls to be able to look at the HTML and see, okay, what does this do? So we do a lot of that. Programming, we also are really encouraging the girls to move from being passive users of technology to developers, creating things. Like I said, we needed to meet the girls where they are and then, you know, build them up. So we use tools like Scratch, where they can build games, and they can pick, like, you know, chunks of code, and then they can start to understand the relationship between, okay, this line, okay, so this line does this and this line does that, and, you know, that's very interesting and exciting for the girls. They also build things as well. This is from our camp last year, where the girls built an electronic counter, and they showed it off at the graduation ceremony. The graduation ceremony is a big part of the camp because we encourage the girls to show, they're basically showing off the things that they've created to an audience of their family, the media, government officials, just different stakeholders, you know, who can come and see what they're doing. Video production, they learn to make short films. So we use a mix of different equipments. This is one of our girls using a high-end camera, but because she's not likely to get access to this tool in her day-to-day life, we also show them how to use these simple mobile phones that have a video camera facility so they can film. And so they form teams, you know, somebody's the director, somebody's a producer, somebody's, you know, some people are the actors, and they make short films, and then they learn how to transfer them to the computer, edit it, you know, using different software. So it's interesting. This, the career talks is, I think, you know, apart from the classes, this is probably one of the biggest things, the biggest parts of the camp that really changes how girls view science and technology, because we invite women who are working in technical fields, and even women who are not in science and technology, but who are using technology in very interesting ways in their work. And they come to speak to the girls and tell them what they do, what their work is like. This was from last year. We had the chief technology officer of MTN Nigeria. And MTN happens to be the biggest telecommunications company in Nigeria, with their parent company in South Africa. And the CTO happens to be a woman. So she came and spoke to them, and the girls were amazed. They were like, what? You know, well, we thought that, you know, that's like a man's job. And so they were really interested, and she connected with them because she spoke about the subjects that, you know, you need to be able to study, you need to be good at, you know, to get to where she is. So it helps them start to think and plan their futures and start to see a place for themselves in science and tech. And then, of course, we have field trips as well. So we put a very practical aspect to everything that the girls are learning in the camp. They go out to technology companies and they see what actually happens. This is the first computer manufacturing company in Nigeria, and incidentally happens to be run by a woman. So she's really interested in our work, and and we went there last year, and the girls actually had the opportunity to work on the assembly line. So yeah, so we do all those things. It's very important for us to assess the work that we're doing to see, are we achieving the goals that we set out to? I mean, otherwise there's no point. So we have a number of evaluation instruments that we've designed that we administer. And so based on that, for our camps, anyway, we found that 77% of the girls, 6 months after the camp was over, were using some of the tools that they learned. And the most popular ones were Word, because they use that in school, email, Facebook. Facebook is very, very big. And the internet for finding information. And then we found out that at least 40% of the girls had decided for a career in science and technology, which was really, really interesting. For those of the girls who were not inclined that way, they would still indicated an interest in using technology, integrating technology in their future careers or their personal lives. So, I mean, we feel that, at least that was a success. But, I mean, for us, we're always trying to figure out better ways of measuring our work, because that's very important. If you don't have the data, then you can't really measure how effective, your intervention is. Our camps tend to be small because we like to work very, directly with the girls. So far we've had 108 graduates for the camp. But I mean, over the years, we've really tried to explore ways to scale up. And so last year we had 2 camps instead of 1, and we also increased the number of girls in each camp. This year we're going to have 3 camps instead of 2, and we are identifying partnerships, so people we can partner with. So we identified a nonprofit organization based here in the US called WOW Foundation, and so we're going to be organizing a robotics camp in July. So I mean, so things like that I think will really help us to be able to reach out to more girls, to be able to do more, and to be able to build, competencies and leverage on, our different strengths. So the girls, give us their feedback. It's very important for them. I mean, apart from the skills that they get in being able to use computers, the internet, programming, creating things, I think it gives them an overall sense of confidence, because, I mean, these are areas that are traditionally seen as very male dominated. So the girls come out and they're like, wow, well, I can do anything, Yeah, we see very practical applications of the knowledge they get. The girls are using the skills in very interesting ways. Some of them are now recording. This is one of our graduates, and she now records services in her local church. So yeah, so looking forward, we look to build more partnerships so we can do more. We're going to be running, setting up computer clubs so that we can build up on the work that we do at the camp, especially as we look at girls developing, creating, programming, coding. It can't be something they learn once, a year, and then that's it. We need to keep working with them so that they can keep building up their skills. So I mean, so we have a grant to start that off, and then, we'll look to building that and expanding that in the future, and introducing, other, computer science concepts, robotics, and, just other different topics that we haven't covered so far. So yeah, so it's been interesting work, and I look forward to your comments, your questions, maybe on how we can do things better. And so thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. I think during your presentation, it was interesting for me to hear you talk about sort of different spaces. You sort of started talking about the traditional space that girls and women occupy, and talked a little bit about what that meant in terms of a formal and informal space, and actually creating camps, this new space, and helping the girls learn to navigate a virtual space. So now we go on to the other gentleman on our panel who was very actively participating in our exercises. Early, I was glad to see him stretching. So, David, we come to you now. And David is the president and co-founder of Global Minimum Inc. It's an international NGO that has distributed over 15,000 mosquito nets in Sierra Leone. And right now, one of their major projects is focusing on fostering a culture of innovation among high school students. So I believe that David has a video presentation where he's going to be talking a little bit more about his work. So David?
Yes. Can you hear me clearly? Yes. Great. All right. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I was not able to be there, but I've been as involved as everybody else who's watching online. And thank you for all the great presentations by the other speakers. What our vision really is how can we have a platform such that every young person in Africa has the opportunity to solve their own problem within their community. And our responsibility, our job, my role, and my colleagues is that we should only be able to enable and facilitate that process. You see, I'm a PhD student at MIT Media Lab where we design the future. And specifically for me, I designed prosthetic devices that are comfortable for amputees, whether they are amputees here in Boston or amputees in Sierra Leone, where I come from. And other different people work on other advanced technologies. None of us have the same background. And the only thing that really connects the people at the Media Lab is that we can all dare to dream, and we can all have this desire to think about the problem, understand what resources we have access to, and solve those problems. And as I worked on developing my own prosthetic devices and bringing them to Sierra Leone, it became clear that I was part of the problem that was very evident in Sierra Leone. That was we were dependent on foreign actors, we were dependent on aid. The young people who are in my cohort, my classmates, who are absolutely brilliant people, will not have a conversation about what they can do, will not have a conversation about prototypes they can build, because we have a generation that is dependent on foreign aid and foreign actors. And so this takes away the self-efficacy that is needed to dream and to be creative. And so with my colleagues, so Global Minimum is an organization I started out in high school with some of my best friends from high school. And one of them, Jacob, is actually running Innovate Kenya, which I'll talk to you briefly about. But we set out to launch Innovate Salon, and Salon is Sierra Leone in Creole. And what Innovate Salon does is that we ask young people to think about the problem, tell us how they want to solve it, what resources they need, and in return, we give them cash to develop prototypes. We give them mentorship locally and internationally. Most of their mentors have been based from MIT and Harvard networks that we have access to, and the diaspora community. And then we form a network with other local mentors, and we do that by having innovation camps and hackathons and various other things. And over the last year, we've seen kids who had never ever made anything develop products that are being used in their community. And some of you may have seen a pretty viral video about this kid called Kelvin Doe, who came to visit me at MIT last year, and he made his own generator and battery and FM radio station for his community that's been viewed about 4.4 million times. And they actually just had a piece about him launched today because he was at TEDx Teen. Now, this is a kid who came from a home where he was allowed to be creative, but he went to a public school, and he was able to create something within his community that was helpful. And we also have stories about this girl, for example, Susan, who's going to be joining me in California to visit with Google. And Susan weaves, and Susan does raffia bag planting. She works with raffia, and her team was trying to look at how do you come up with local colors from the bush. How do you weave local raffia bags and fashionable products that she can use? Because for her, she wants to be a fashion designer. She wants to go on and make products that she can bring and show the rest of the world that Sierra Leone can also have cool products, and that she was making it. And where did she learn it? She learned it from her grandmother from the village. She had learned this, how to weave products way back when she was young, and once she came to the town, she'd forgotten about it. And through this project, she's reconnected with her grandmother again, and has been using this skill set to develop new products based on colors that the rest of her team has been developing. And we have lots and lots of other examples that show young people who, for example, this other high school that used to be dependent on actually aid and their school feeding program was going to be cut because there wasn't any money, and these students worked with other people within their community and the chiefs to get their farmland, which was given to them for free, that they cultivated with all the young men, and have been able to grow rice. They've been able to grow pepper and groundnuts, which they've sold to actually get a lot of beans and other produce that they cannot grow, and they're expanding this to rice and cassava. It is this ability to dream, this ability to say, I can do this, that we want every kid, boy, girl, everybody should have access to. Because until we have access to that, this whole thing about technology, this whole thing, it's not going to go anywhere, because there's going to be one or two people who will take advantage of it. But we need everybody to think that way. Sure, there's been lots of successes. There has been challenges as well. One thing that we never talk about is this idea of integrity. We're all smart. We all have PhDs and we all have masters, but there's still corruption within our countries. There's no integrity. So just being an innovator, being an entrepreneur is not enough. We remove these things. We are missing an opportunity to teach and give an opportunity to our young kids, to our young brothers and sisters, to learn about something that's fundamental, that is the most important piece to transforming our societies. We didn't think about this last year, but now we are forced to deal with it. And I think it should be integrity, and opportunity to learn. It should be an integral part in every project that exists. Again, like I said, this was not something we had thought about. And one of the earlier speakers mentioned another challenge about scale. It is okay to celebrate young people like Richard, who was just in TED, where he'd use his LED lighting to protect his lion, or to celebrate Kelvin, whose video has been viewed 4.5 million times. It's okay. But that is not enough. That's not what we need. We need to bring these products to scale. Now, these entrepreneurs, these young people, are not going to be the ones that bring them up to scale. So the question is, after we work with them, how do we create opportunities and platforms that bring these resources to these young entrepreneurs to bring them to scale? This is a challenge I don't know how to solve. This is a challenge we need to solve. So whilst we continue talking about innovation and giving every young person an opportunity to make, and so that they can dare to dream and do something, there are challenges that many of us have been avoiding, and that is integrity, which in many ways is lacking in many projects across the continent by themselves, and this idea of scale, and that we shouldn't be satisfied with duct taping solutions and celebrating them. I do not want to see one person, any one of my kids, being celebrated globally, just one. That's not good enough. My responsibility is that every kid should have this opportunity. So I'm very, very happy to be here, and actually we've expanded. Now we're doing something in Kenya, and Jacob, who runs this in Kenya, has done a fantastic job, and he's resident in Kenya and meeting with all the local team there. Grant, who's doing this in Cape Town, is also expanding it in Cape Town at the same time as we expanded in Sierra Leone. So we are hoping to grow. Whoever does it, it's this idea about providing the opportunity for a young person anywhere to say, I understand my challenge locally. I know the resources that I have available. I understand the limitations of whatever solutions exist, and I can do it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David, to sort of emphasizing those points on self-efficiency, ability to dream, integrity, and sort of bringing to scale in a real and practical way. So let's open up the floor to get some discussion and some questions. And in the interest of time, once again, my colleagues will come around with the microphone. Please give your name and affiliation, and we'll take perhaps 2 or 3 questions at a time. So, yes, please.
Isn't at least one important step forward for some of these young entrepreneurial, say, app developers, connecting with cell phone companies that can purchase their apps and help them sort of overnight go to scale? Are any of you interacting with the cell phone providers to try to provide that opportunity for this?
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Kevin Orama again from the African Technology Policy Studies. I think the last presentation really raises a number of issues that I think we need to discuss going forward, and that's also part of what has been raised here. There are so many opportunities and options for scaling up innovation, but there are so many bottlenecks that these young innovators hardly can deal with, and that needs cooperation, it needs building partnerships, it needs working together in order to try and address the issues. For example, let me just give an example with the M-Pesa technology in Kenya. The young man who developed it actually took this option of having Safaricom come on board to take this forward. And actually he was just basically sidelined from the whole process. In 2009, my organization launched an innovation challenge program for African youths and women, and we had so many of them come through to Cairo to present innovative ideas and so on. And when we identified mentors to try and help them in the private sector take forward some of their ideas, a lot of them come back to say, look, you've just sold me out.
Yeah.
So we don't have the policy frameworks to actually protect and preserve innovation for access and benefit sharing. So that needs to be done at that level where the young innovator is confident that he can actually have someone who is working in partnership and that he or she is not going to lose out in the end. So that's one area that really needs to be giving attention. And also the leadership and business skills that needs to be developed. And that's why a lot of business incubation facilities that we have now within the Youth Innovation Challenge program becomes handy, because we find some of the innovators, they have very brilliant ideas, but actually they don't have a business plan. They don't know how to take this from this stage to the other stage and so on. So there's quite a lot that needs to be done. And in my view, it's always in not building and creating little ponds, like what David was saying, the last presenter, but actually trying to connect these ponds in order to have a big river. So how can we then do that? And that has cultural challenges, because also in addition to integrity that most Africans really don't have, there's also that fear of collaboration that is there, and you really don't see a lot of big corporations that grow as a one-man business or a one-person business. So we need to think through all these things as we go forward to help these young innovators not to be orphaned in the near term. And the long and short of it is there are very many options that are out there, but then the institutional structures available in these countries make them really very untenable for these young innovators. And that is where the roles of like the African Youth Forum comes into question, and the African Women Forum, and so on and so forth.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So let's
have a
just
question.
go to the
Roger Mark, I have a question.
yes.
Is it okay?
Okay, we're quick on.
I had
we
a
had
question.
just a couple minutes.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I'm one of those techie people, and my name is Thea. I'm from the GSRP program here at the Wilson Center. I'm a techie person. I've been a techie person since I was young, and even in the United States, there's a problem with females in technology. I was sort of ostracized. So my question to you is this, Liz. You were talking about mentors and what's the other one?
Mentors, sponsors, coaches.
And coaches, mentors and coaches.
Right.
Where do people like me? I'm past the young age now. Where do we find?
It doesn't matter. You can be coached
I'm still an
anytime.
entrepreneur. I have my own website and I'm still doing my own thing. You know, it takes time. But where do you find mentors and coaches with the integrity that David is talking about here in the States and abroad in Africa? And if I wanted to get involved in Africa, how do I take my skills over there to help with that movement?
And let's just tie that to any final comments.
Oh, okay. Wrap
Thank
it
you for
up.
your
In
patience.
other words.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, the short answer is I'd be more than happy to kind of connect with you and maybe share some resources with you. The long answer is that we do need to start thinking about developing institutions that will enable young people to be able to find the resources and the mentors that they have. For instance, when I started my business in 2001, I was fortunate enough that I could go to a small business development center and go to anyone's familiar with SCORE? SCORE is sort of these retired executives who come and they mentor you. So there was a structure around starting a business and getting the resources that you need. So I think we need to replicate something similar to that on the continent. I also think that we need to think about identifying people who are ethical. They always say like-minded people are, birds of feather stick together. And I think that because we have the internet, right, it's very easy for you to go and research me because there's a lot of information about me to figure out that I am actually an ethical person. And you go from one person to another person to another person, get references from me. So it's really kind of looking at the people who you have access to and seeing who they can recommend to you and going from there. There are some organizations, but I mean, in terms of just from a wider view, I think that we really do need to put those structures in place on the continent so that young people don't lose out on their ideas. I remember reading an article, I think it was last week, about three young people who have come up with a soap, an anti-malaria soap, that is quite phenomenal. And I think they were recognized because they won some sort of a business challenge. And the thing that bothered me about reading the article is they said, oh, and we're going to give it to NGOs who can, distribute this. I'm going, no, you need to sell this to the market. You need a business plan. You need to have this as a company, and you sell it directly. And unfortunately, what happened is, and I'm not trying to make a political statement about that, but here we have, again, kids who are innovative. They've come up to deal with a very significant challenge, yet they don't even realize that they themselves can go to market with this, and they can make the money, and they're looking to sell the. I don't even know if they're going to sell it to an NGO, but they don't have the right people. So I immediately reached out to a friend of mine who's a venture capitalist. I'm like, you need to get in touch with these people and help them so that they can go into business. But it takes us being vigilant and being out there helping. Is that
Liz,
enough of a
is
wrap
who
up?
you need to talk to
Is that a
if
good
they
wrap
actually
up?
Well connected. Edith, any final comments, any sort of responses, question of opportunities at cell phone companies, or sort of the questions that were raised earlier?
What I'm going to, my concluding remarks would be that the African Women Forum for Science and Technology and the African Youth Forum for Science and Technology are both platforms that are offering some of the scaling up solutions that African young innovators and women need. And we've got provisions for membership. So if anybody is interested, you can become members and try to understand and even to know how you can scale up your innovations and how we can pair you up with people who can mentor you, and also how we can help you identify opportunities not just in Africa but globally. So I think you'd need to come and access our website and also try to contact us, and then we will be able to advise on a way forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with a lot of the work we do, we're not really yet at the stage where we're working with a lot of startups or people who have innovations to launch. There are innovation hubs, at least I know of one in Nigeria, CC Hub, and they do a lot of that work, and they also partner with, they do have some partnerships, for instance, I think with Nokia, so they have specific programs where they're working with young innovators to develop specific applications, and then they get some support from Nokia in terms of mentoring and helping them take their products to market, and also with the equipping of business skills as well, which is very important because we focus on the technical side and not really the business side. So developing a good business model and then knowing what to do in order to make your product commercially viable. So there are innovation hubs, at least in Nigeria, there's that one that, that offers that kind of support. So, so I think that there are some organizations out there that can do that kind of work. It just, you just need to do some research or maybe link to, so for instance, a network that has links where you can get, pointers to the kind of people or resources that you need. Yeah.
Great, thank you. David, any concluding thoughts from you?
My only concluding thoughts is that really all of these opportunities that exist, as the last speaker just mentioned, are great initial beginnings, and that it really should be that these opportunities should be widely available everywhere across the continent, not just in Lagos or not just in Nairobi, and not just somebody who's connected and who's a mobile app programmer can access these, but that we can create platforms that support all kinds of innovations. So that's all.
Great, but thank you very much. I'd like to invite you to join me in thanking the panelists for a very good session this afternoon. And as we wrap up the discussion for today, I'd like to invite Ambassador Robin Sanders to come up to make a final vote of thanks for today's discussion.
I know you had a long afternoon, so I'll keep my vote of thanks really quite short. Just wanted to say, in terms of what you heard today, there are a couple of key messages, I think. And one, I'd like to actually use myself as an example. My background is ICT. My doctorate's in ICT, and I have 2 other degrees, my BA and master's. And when you think about what I did for a living, you don't see ICT as a key role of what I did, but it was. And it helps you really think either out of the box or next to the box in what you're doing. So for those that don't want to be a techie per se, you can use ICT in just about everything you do, whatever your profession is. So that's kind of a key message. I was a political scientist, but there was no time that I didn't use ICT and my ICT degrees in what I did. So even if you're not a techie as a young woman or as a young person, ICT should really be the hub of what you're doing because it has to be part of everything that you do, whatever profession that you choose. We heard in terms of population, you've got 50% of the continent really represent youth and women. And so if you're not reaching youth and women with ICT, then you're missing out on an economic development opportunity. The only way forward for economic development is to ensure that women and youth are really focused on in terms of ICT. Access to financing. We heard a little bit about access to financing for young companies. I think that is really one of the major challenges. I worked with a major Fortune 500 company and a bank of industry in Nigeria. We did an ICT SME program last year just for women and youth, really to be able to provide them an opportunity to have access to financing. We had live panels, 8 Nigerian banks, and they were each able to have 10 minutes alone with each bank to present their proposals and to present their business plans. And a lot of them actually got capital scaling up. So really thinking about how you provide that access to financing is really going to be key for the next stage of everything that you're talking about. The other thing, I think there were a couple of messages in terms of just youth and women. Innovativeness and creativity, that those are very, very key in order to move forward as a small business. You've got to think about what your niche area is, where that innovation can help that niche area and move forward in that area. Integrity. I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful remark about integrity, because if you don't have personal integrity, then your business is not going to have integrity. And I think that's a challenge across the board, because we are living in a very broad, open world today where information is shared so broadly. But you have to bring integrity to what you do in order to make sure that your business moves forward. Policy frameworks. Definitely on the continent, the need for focus on policy and regulatory frameworks was very, very key. And it's an area I think that more voices need to be heard on. And that's also where integrity comes in. I think you can have integrity without the policy frameworks being in place. I already talked about access to financing, incubation, providing that space for business development, developing business proposals. We had 100 plus SMEs from around Africa. It was a Pan-African SME program in November in Nigeria. And it was open to everybody that presented a business plan. But one of the things they did not do well, even those who were already in business, who had been in business, they did not have a good business plan. They didn't, if they were already in business, they didn't have the next step for their business. So really developing that space, incubation for business plans is really, really key. We also heard about networking, connecting, and sharing information. We all need to be more open about that, because the only way that economic development is going to move forward is for us to be able to share information. And last but not least, and this is kind of my personal message, the mobile platform to me is the way of the future. Yes, you've got laptops, yes, you've got tablets, but think about what you're doing going forward. How do you get that on a mobile platform? And when you can have people developing iCal and other mobile services to remind people to take their HIV/AIDS medicine, to remind farmers who don't read to use their mobile phones to develop communication with other farmers so they can develop cooperatives or know what their yields are going to be or what the prices are for their commodities. All those things are being done now on mobile phones. So when you're looking at your business going forward, think about what that platform is going to look like on a mobile phone, because mobile phones are going to be the ICT platform totally for the future. And I think I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. So as we reflect on those really salient points and continue the dialogue, I would just a couple reminders for you. Continue to visit us on our website at wilsoncenter.org and to have a look at our blog at africaupclose.wilsoncenter.org. So thank you again for joining us for a really invigorating and inspiring conversation and dialogue. Once again, let's build on our reflections from today and hang around for a little bit and chat a little bit more with our panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our moderator.
Good job. You want to get your presentation.
I know, and so I came here, I was like, walking.
Yes, I am.